There are two crucial elections either side of the Atlantic this year in Britain and the US, which will determine the future of two Western democracies. But today has begun an election in Russia whose winner, Vladimir Putin, is all but assured, which will have none of the same democratic safeguards in place. It is an election which could well have a bearing on Britain and the US. Incumbent President Putin's most serious opponents are either in prison or exile or dead, and therefore he is guaranteed a landslide victory. But there will still be protests at polling stations right across Russia.
It may look like an election, but this is Russia, and this is anything but an election, as Vladimir Putin seeks another 6 years in office. But not everyone follows the script. Some decided to pour ink into ballot boxes. Some setting them alight in protest. Others, knowing the consequences of opposition, avoided controversy. I came as a citizen of my country with a sense of duty, Tatiana says. We are in a difficult moment. We need to unite. We have a leader. The Kremlin rejects most international observers who say these elections aren't free and fair, determined to portray Putin as having Russia's backing.
Because the Kremlin, at the end of the day, wants to present Putin as the leader without alternative. That means that he's completely cleared the political field of rivals, including by blocking candidacies, including by locking people up, and in the case of Alexei Navalny, including killing the leading figure of the opposition.
Alexei Navalny's widow urged supporters to swamp polling stations on Sunday at noon and vote for anyone but Putin.
Alexei.
In a video message, Yulia Navalnaya said, "We need to show that we exist, and there are many of us." As voting got underway, in Ukraine, 16 people were reported to have been killed and 53 injured in a Russian missile strike in Odessa. In parts of occupied Ukraine that Russia calls its new regions, voting started 10 days before election day. Marina Litvinenko knows more than most what Vladimir Putin is capable of. Her husband Alexander was murdered after being poisoned by former Russian agents in 2006 in a London hotel.
Russians just tired with Putin, with this regime, and they need support. They need support, and one day it might change.
This afternoon, the Kremlin released pictures they say show Vladimir Putin voting online. The presidential election result will be announced on Monday. There'll be no prizes for guessing the winner.
Neil, no surprises for guessing who the winner will be, but I guess the question is, how important is this election?
Well, Raggy, this isn't an election as we would understand it, as you say. 3 other candidates here come from Kremlin-friendly parties. None of them oppose the war in Ukraine. But this is an election that matters for the Kremlin. It offers a veneer of legitimacy. And it's been interesting over the years watching Vladimir Putin because he's happy to change the rules when needed, but seems to think that it's important somehow to be seen to follow rules of a sort. And I think that when his victory is announced on Monday morning, he will claim that it shows that the Russian people want him to lead. It's important, though, not to lose sight that he does have support in Russia, but quantifying it, that's a completely different issue.
I guess the next question is, what does this mean for both sides of the Atlantic, for us here, where we have an election in the next year, and where there is going to be an election in November in the United States?
I think that Russia's election isn't that significant because we know the outcome. But the US presidential election in November certainly is. I mean, a Trump victory there could see a deal in Ukraine. Would Putin be able to hang on to the 20% or so of Ukraine that his forces currently occupy? Well, today the leaders of France, Germany and Poland met, putting on a united front supporting Ukraine. The French President Emmanuel Macron said that the security of Europe is at stake. Raggy, for now, Vladimir Putin remains in charge of the world's largest nuclear weapons arsenal. On Monday, he will start a further term of 6 years in office.
Implications for all of us and for Ukraine. Thank you very much indeed.